The Buccaneers are bringing back Lavonte David while news is flying around at warp speed. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. A crazy amount of news is already hitting the NFL world before the negotiating window has even opened. I might as well hit you with a mock draft. We're going to talk about Chris Godwin, but let's start with the most relevant Buccaneers news as of this recording, which is 9:17 p.m. on Sunday. But the Buccaneers and Lavonte David have agreed to a one-year deal worth up to $10 million. So on Friday's show, I mentioned Bobby Wagner's deal with the Washington Commanders, and I said it was probably going to be similar to what Lavonte David's market would be. Well, that turned out to be right, because on Friday evening, Lavonte David and the Bucs got an agreement done. Lavonte was going to get $9 million guaranteed in a deal worth up to $10 million. Lavonte posted on Instagram saying, quote, "I love the game too much to give it up just yet. Good Lord blessing me with another opportunity, so I figured I should take advantage of it. Tampa, I'm not done yet. See you soon," end quote. And then Buccaneers GM Jason Light issued a statement saying, quote, "Lavonte is not only one of the greatest Buccaneers in history, but is the embodiment of consistency, excellence, and leadership. For over a decade, he has been the heart of our defense, setting the standard with his relentless work ethic and passion for the game. His impact on and off the field is immeasurable, and we are thrilled to have him back for another season," end quote. This is huge for the Buccaneers, and while I thought the first domino to fall would have been Chris Godwin, who we are going to talk about in a little bit, it is Lavonte. Now, this was probably going to be a much easier deal to get done than what Chris Godwin's is going to be, if there is a deal to be made. The ball was in Lavonte's court the entire time. He knew that if he wanted to play, he had an open door to return to Tampa. So it was about deciding whether or not, A, he wanted to play at all, and then B, if he would entertain the idea of playing elsewhere. That's something that came out during the combine in Indianapolis, was that teams were reaching out to Lavonte's agent to gauge his interest on whether or not he would be open to leaving Tampa and playing for another team. Now, I don't think that that was ever going to happen. I don't think that was a true option for Lavonte David, that he was going to be a Buc if he decided he wanted to continue. So then it was about deciding whether or not he actually wanted to continue, right? Once that was settled, it was a quick call to his agent saying that he's coming back, and then a call from the agent to Jason Light saying, okay, Lavonte wants to play another year. Let's get a deal worked out real quick. And it was probably pretty quick to go ahead and get that done, especially after Bobby Wagner's numbers came out on Thursday night. And I have to say, our guy Trevor Sikkema pointed out on Twitter that Derek Brooks played 14 years wire to wire for the Buccaneers. This will mark 14 years for Lavonte wire to wire for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What's crazy is that there honestly could be a debate before long as to which linebacker was the better one in Buccaneers history. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think that it's Derek Brooks, but let's go ahead and talk about it for a second. Between the two, over the course of their careers, Lavonte has more forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, sacks, tackles for loss, playoff wins, and fewer playoff losses. Brooks has more interceptions and tackles. They both have one Lombardi. It's honestly kind of crazy to think about that we've all regarded Derek Brooks as not only one of the best Buccaneers of all time, but as one of the greatest linebackers that this game has ever seen. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. To see that Lavonte David has surpassed him or could surpass him, he's 111 tackles behind Brooks at the moment. He's definitely not going to catch him on interceptions. He's behind Derek by 12, but only 111 tackles behind. So that he has surpassed or could surpass him in these categories just continues to put into perspective how special Lavonte David truly is and how criminally underrated he's been for the last 13 years. Obviously, though, this was a big move for the Bucs. They are now in search of one starting linebacker, or at the very least, one linebacker that can platoon with Servassier Dennis, rather than having to replace Lavonte on top of already needing to address the linebacker position. So while it wasn't the domino that I thought would fall first, that does not make it any less important to the Buccaneers in 2025 and beyond. On the flip side of that, though, is the fact that a lot of other linebackers have already been locked up prior to free agency. So if the Bucs are going to get a guy on the open market to come in and start next to Lavonte David, the pickings are getting slim. Zach Bond, Nick Bolton, Bobby Wagner, Ernest Jones, Jamie Sherwood, they have all stayed with their current teams. That means that Dre Greenlaw is the top remaining linebacker, and that might put him out of the Bucs' price range. Robert Spillane and EJ Speed are still floating around as well, but now the Bucs may have to look to the draft in order to find what they're looking for at linebacker. The linebacker market wasn't really great to begin with, so teams went out, they made sure to lock up their own guys before they hit the market, and they potentially lost him this week. But now for a team like Tampa that needed two, Lavonte included, things have gotten a little bit tougher. Now, I do still think that Greenlaw is in the cards for the Buccaneers, but it depends on whether or not a linebacker needy team is willing to overlook the injury risk of him coming off of that Achilles that he ruptured in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs a little over a year ago, and then, to turn around and give him a big chunk of change just because they really need to fill the position. If that happens, the Bucs are probably out of the at least starting linebacker market. You are going to see that position rise up the draft boards in terms of what position they need the most. They may still be in on some depth guys. They did not tender restricted free agent JJ Russell. They could still bring him back on a one-year deal, but they were not going to commit to $3.2 million on a tender offer. So while the Bucs are still in the market for a linebacker, now it's a question of whether or not can they grab a starter in free agency, or is linebacker now going to be one of the more pressing needs when the NFL draft rolls around. The Chris Godwin market is now worrisome. That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress and you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so that you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Chris Godwin for a minute. So as you remember, it was less than a month ago. I think it was probably two and a half weeks ago that I said I was about 97% confident that Godwin was coming back. Well, folks, as of 9:26 p.m., I am now under 20% confident. There's been a lot coming out about Godwin's market that should make Bucs fans really nervous heading into this week. So it started over the weekend with Carlos Lopez. He is a Patriots insider, and he tweeted out that it was believed that New England was willing to offer Godwin upwards of $28 million a year in free agency. And then Mike Giardi, another Patriots beat writer, said that a couple of teams around the league believe Godwin's number is closer to $22 million a year. However, it only takes one team to blow that number out of the water. And let's be honest, if the Patriots are willing to go over $25 million, the Bucs probably are just not going to be able to compete with that. I could see them being in the hunt at that $22 million number, but you get north of 25, I don't think the Bucs are going to be able to pull that trigger. And then take into account the human factor. Godwin and his wife are from Delaware. That's, New England's pretty close to home for them. And that might be enticing, especially with all that additional money. Now, over the course of Saturday, with this stuff coming out, Rick Stroud said that he was giving it about a 30% chance that Chris Godwin leaves. Now, as news was flying around at the speed of light on Sunday, Diana Rossini tweeted out, quote, "Many teams around the league are waiting to see if wide receiver Chris Godwin will hit free agency or if Tampa Bay will bring him back. The plan has always been to test free agency, but as we saw last year with Mike Evans, Tampa can get deals done." End quote. The plan has always been to test free agency. Now, Diana is right. That was Evans' plan last year until his wife Ashley stepped in and said that she didn't want to move. So a week before the negotiating window opened, Mike Evans got a deal done with the Buccaneers. I'm going to be honest. If the Bucs and Chris Godwin do not have an agreement in place before noon on Monday, I have come to the opinion that he is not coming back. Someone is going to back a Brinks truck into his driveway. And I go back to Friday's episode. I talked about the crappy team tax, which is something that the Patriots would have to pay. But if they're willing to pay that, then there's a good chance that he goes. Teams like Kansas City, Buffalo, Green Bay now with DK Metcalf being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are going to start calling Chris Godwin immediately at noon on Monday when that negotiating window opens. And the more that teams call, the higher the price goes up and the harder it is to come to an agreement with the Buccaneers. The harder it is for them to be able to get that money to work. This could be the last time that Godwin is really able to cash in. And if he gets 3 years, $80 million, I don't think the Bucs are going there. We all love Godwin, the team, the players, the coaches, the fans, the media, the community. But he's got to do what's best for him. And I'm telling you this right now. I am not going to come on this show and bash him or badmouth him if he leaves. He helped bring a championship to this city. He has been a fantastic person within the community. He has been charitable, and he is never anything short of kind, courteous, and respectful to anyone who has the opportunity to speak with him. I remember having Chris Godwin on this podcast way back when he was a rookie. And David and I still to this day look back on that conversation as well as the one that we had with Shaq Barrett as two of the best conversations we have ever had with a Buccaneer on this show. But I am warning you all now. This seems like it is on the cusp of taking a really bad turn for the Bucs and their fans. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that he sticks around. I hope on Tuesday's show I am talking to you about the agreement that Chris Godwin has with the Buccaneers and that he is back for 2025 and beyond. But come Monday at noon Eastern, his phone is going to be ringing off the hook. His agent's phone is going to be ringing off the hook. That's the deadline. And if he leaves, now we have to talk about that $18 million in dead cap that the Bucs have to eat this season. And that's going to affect the rest of their free agent plans. And before I move on here, I want to say this. This is another soapbox, another public service announcement, whatever you want to call it. If Godwin does leave, do not blame Jason Light. I can promise you that he is doing everything that he can to get Godwin to stay. But it takes two. It takes two to get these deals done. It takes some give. It takes some take. There has to be a middle ground. And if you can't meet somewhere in the middle, then a deal isn't going to happen. So don't tag Jason Light on Twitter and attack him for letting Godwin go. Sometimes the best decisions are the hardest ones to make. And they're even harder to explain or justify to those outside of the decision-making process. But I will say this. For those of you that follow hockey, and even if you don't, if you're in the Tampa area, you know all about this. Think about how angry Lightning fans were that Julian Breezeball let Steven Stamkos go. I was one of them. That was a sentimental, personal, hope that Steven Stamkos was going to be a Lightning for life. And Breezeball had to make the tough decision. He had to take his lumps on social media. He was constantly berated and attacked on Twitter, on Facebook, in the comment section of newspapers, everywhere. He was getting railroaded. But take a look at what Steven Stamkos has done this year. Take a look at what Jake Gensel has done for the Lightning this year. And I think a lot of the angry Lightning fans now see that Breezeball was right. So if the price for Godwin gets to a point that Jason Light and Mike Greenberg say that they just can't do it and still be able to piece together a championship caliber roster, then I think they have done enough to gain the benefit of the doubt, that they have done enough, that they have earned the trust that the fans should give them the opportunity to show everyone that there is a plan B, that they always knew that Godwin leaving was possible, and let them handle it the way that they have mapped out that they're going to handle it. Because let me tell you, if Godwin at 1:00 on Monday, agrees to a deal with the New England Patriots, it's not like Jason and Todd and Greeny are sitting in Light's office going, oh God, what do we do now? They have a plan. Let it play out. You don't want to lose Godwin. I don't want to lose Godwin. Jason, Todd, Mike, Baker, they don't want to lose Godwin. But if they do, trust in the process. Believe that the Bucs are going to be able to overcome it and still be able to put together a championship caliber roster. Do not start freaking out immediately. Let things play out. Let the chips fall, and then we'll see where the Bucs are come the end of draft weekend. Mock Draft Monday, that is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who is cutting down the nets. Now, I don't think my Fighting Illini are going to make the same noise that they did last year, but right now, Duke is the favorite at plus 330, followed by Auburn at plus 380, then the Florida Gators at plus 750, and Houston at plus 850. The FanDuel app is super easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around for those winnings to show up in my account. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Wrapping things up here on a Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast, and that means it's a mock draft Monday, and we have a 7-round mock draft from Pro Football Network, and let me tell you, this one's got some fireworks. At 19, they have the Buccaneers selecting edge rusher Michael Williams from Georgia, saying Williams is the elite power producer and battering ram that the Bucs need at the position. Then in the second round at pick 52, the Bucs take Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback from Kentucky, saying that Hairston's 4.28 speed shows up on tape when he's tasked with clicking and closing over top breaks. He needs to get stronger and improve at the catch, but his range is elite. Now, I'm going to react to this draft as a whole coming up in a minute, but let me say this pick made me really, really mad because the very next pick, they had Benjamin Morrison going to the Packers, and you all know that that's unacceptable. Anyway, at 84, they have the Buccaneers selecting no one. They have the Bengals selecting Miami edge rusher Tyler Barron because the Bucs traded this pick in a package for Trey Hendrickson. It's pick 84 and a 2026 second rounder for the NFL's leading sacker over the last 2 years. At pick 120, they have the Bucs taking Oregon linebacker Jeffrey Bossa. At 158, they have the Bucs taking Illinois wide receiver Pat Bryant. And then finally, at 237, they have the Bucs selecting Toledo safety Maxon Hook. Just real quick, let's say the Bucs take Maxon Hook and he develops into one of the best defenders on the team. Can the Bucs just give him a captain patch no matter what so that the Bucs have Captain Hook? I know it's a cheesy dad joke, but I couldn't get it out of my brain and I had to share it with all of you. So the Bucs draft haul in this mock is edge rusher Michael Williams, cornerback Maxwell Hairston, linebacker Jeffrey Bossa, wide receiver Pat Bryant, and safety Maxon Hook, and then acquiring Trey Hendrickson in a trade that cost you your third-round pick this year, a second-round pick next year. Yeah, you take that all day long. This might be the most picture-perfect mock draft for the Buccaneers. You get an immediate, elite edge rusher. I just mentioned the guy has led the NFL in sacks over the last 2 seasons. Then you pair him with an athletic freak like Michael Williams to bring into a room that already has Yaya Diaby and Chris Braswell. Holy moly. And while I would have preferred Morrison, because you guys know how much I love his ability, the pick of Hairston is absolutely nothing to be upset about. Like, Hairston's a really, really good corner. I'm just going to lean towards my personal favorite guy. But if the Bucs come away with Hairston, I'm going to be psyched. His length, his speed, his tackling, that is a massive upgrade on the outside for Todd Bowles' defense. Jeffrey Bossa in the 4th round is insane. He's a plug-and-play starter in this defense next to Lavonte David. He is definitely one of my draft crushes this year when it comes to players that I think are just made in a lab for the Buccaneers. Then you add in Pat Bryant in the 5th. I mean, come on, man. And don't call me a homer. Bryant is going to see his stock slide a little bit because he didn't have a great combine. I don't care. I have watched this dude play more than probably anyone listening or watching to the show, and I can tell you he is a baller. I don't care about his 40 time. He has game speed. He has an incredible ability to break tackles. Not quite Bucky Irving level, but he would probably be the best wide receiver on this team in terms of being able to break tackles. He had not 1, not 2, but 3 game-winning touchdowns in the final 2 minutes or overtime this season. There isn't another college player in all of 2024 that had more than one. He is clutch. He is as clutch as they get with absolutely phenomenal hands. And if Godwin leaves, well, Pat Bryant and J-Mac, those are your wide receiver screen guys. Bryant loves blocking in the run game. That's something that the Bucs would have to replace if Godwin leaves. He even said at the combine, no block, no rock. That's his mentality. He feels that if you're not doing your job blocking for your running backs, then you don't deserve targets. He can play the slot. He can play outside. I love that pick for the Buccaneers. And then you get a smaller school safety with upside that at the very least provides depth, but you're also going to get special teams play out of him. I love this. I absolutely love this draft for the Bucs. It's going to be nearly impossible to find a mock draft that tops this one because it hits on every single thing that they need. You are getting starters in the first, second, by default, the third, because you gave it up for Hendrickson, the fourth round. You're probably getting your number 3 receiver in the 5th round. Those are right out of the gate 5 guys that immediately upgrade your defense, help your offense, and are plug and play. You can't, if I sat down and I did a mock draft controlling every single team and was reasonable about it and didn't do something stupid like, oh, I'm going to have Shamar Stewart in the first and then I'm going to have Mike Green fall to the Bucs in the second. Like, within reason, you could not orchestrate a mock draft that worked out better for the Bucs than this one. So this is the leader in the clubhouse for the best mock draft of the offseason. We'll see how these start to change after this week, because the first mock drafts after that initial wave of free agency are going to look vastly different than they do right now. Between the trades that are happening and then the players that the teams are going to sign to start to fill some of these holes, we're going to see some serious changes in these mock drafts. But that's going to do it for this episode. And as I sign off, it is 9:43 p.m. on Sunday. If any news breaks, don't come at me in the comments saying that, it's, this guy's already gone, that guy's already gone, this deal's already been done. Like, cut me some slack. All right. We are going to have plenty more to talk about tomorrow. Until then, please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure that you are following along on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And, make sure that you're becoming a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.